Bitcoin will break its all-time high. Altcoins are lying flat on the ground. What exactly should you do right now? In this episode, I'll tell you how you should behave, how to approach the market, and what to do with your altcoins. What should you do with Bitcoin? Should you buy or sell? This episode is here so that you don't lose out during this bull run, but instead get as much out of it as possible. I hope that thanks to this episode, at the end of this bull run, you'll say, Stasiak, thank you. So, without further ado, let's start the episode. So, my dear friends, a new reality. Bitcoin is above $110,000, which means a new all-time high. Of course, unfortunately, many of us didn't have the chance to witness this event live because it happened thanks to the Asians at night at the close of the daily candle. However, allow me to be the hero of a certain meme here. And who has arrived? Mr. Grump, the destroyer of good fun. And no, I'm not talking about the mother-in-law. So my friends, let me bring down to earth those who have already taken off. So, to start, let's quickly look at two combination charts, which will be the key here. Let's start with the one that, in my opinion, is the most important in this situation, namely Bitcoin futures open interest. What's happening there is just a massacre. We are more over-leveraged than ever before, and every single drop in price, literally every drop, will trigger mass liquidations among investors who not only missed the train, but also forgot to buy tickets in the form of lower leverage, meaning a smaller margin. Seriously, with this kind of volatility, where the price movement, not of some shitcoin, but of Bitcoin, with 100x leverage, can swing by several percent in a matter of seconds, it ends badly for some people, so don't try to force anything. At a time when we are maximally over-leveraged, at a time when the delta is insanely high, sooner or later a squeeze has to happen. And it's not about it happening right away. I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but definitely be prepared for it and don't let FOMO get to you. On the other hand, if we look at the Coinbase Premium Index, it's an interesting situation because we have uninterrupted demand from their side, which is helping the price move up. As you can see here, the demand is really high. However, I'd like to point out that this demand is significantly lower than it was in March and November of last year. And to sum up, listen, regarding these two indicators, since this episode isn't about them, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that it's not just you who have thoughts like to the moon, and even the whales have become cautious. So I think you should also be careful here, not get too excited, and temper your enthusiasm a bit about Bitcoin reaching 200,000. It probably will get there, but consider whether it will really happen right now or in the near future. And many of you probably don't know this because you're in the crypto market for the first time, you're experiencing your first bull cycle, but in the last bull run, my friends, and in the one before that, both of which I witnessed and personally went through myself, that second peak was broken. The very same one, listen, from which we directly entered the bear market. It was broken strictly by retail investors, not by whales, not by big players, but solely by the retail crowd. At that time, you could also say there was little liquidity in the market. Back then, whales were also cautious. Back then, people like me who pointed this out to you and you could see it on my content, well, of course, my warnings were heavily ridiculed and I was called a perpetual bear. But I am not a perpetual bear, I'm just a realist. I'm neither a bull nor a bear. I look at the chart and make decisions based on what the chart shows. And having learned from experience, because I've actually been in this market for a few years now, and in traditional markets for much, much longer, greed and the desire to catch the absolute top have never, ever ended well for anyone. That's also why I've been showing you recently on my live streams and in my episodes that I've already sold most of my Bitcoins, that I've sold at this point around 40% of my Ethereum during this pump. And soon, if altcoins get a pump, I'll be selling those off as well, because later on we'll also get into what I think about these altcoins and how I believe things will play out. So listen, absolutely nothing has changed, not only when it comes to people's mentality, but also the market situation. We're really just repeating the same story. The only thing we're currently missing is entering a bear market. But will exactly the same thing happen? I don't know. And I think, and I suspect that not even the biggest players and the top dogs in this market know that. However, considering that the risk and the similarities at this moment are enormous, let me just remind you of a few important rules you need to keep in mind in the coming days and weeks so you don't end up left high and dry, or worse, get completely liquidated and lose 2 or 3 years of investments just because you were a bit greedy and wanted to make a few more bucks. There's a good example I recently gave to someone, and it really helped them understand in a very tangible way why and how they should behave. For instance, imagine a situation where I offer you 1,000,000 zlotys. Right now, I transfer 1,000,000 zlotys to your account. There's no problem at all. You just send me your account number, I make the transfer, and you'll have the money in 5 minutes. But you also have a second option to choose from. Namely, I won't transfer the million to you today. If you wait until tomorrow, you'll have a 50-50 chance that I'll transfer you 1,200,000. What do? I assume that 99% of you would choose the guaranteed million on the first day. Where are you? Here you go. You take your money and go home because it's only 200,000. Because that's a risk so small that it's not worth risking losing everything just to get 20% more. And you do exactly the same thing in this market. You are super greedy people who wait just a little longer thinking it will go up for sure. You don't look at how many coins you have. You don't look at what percentage of your deposit you've made. You just want a little more without really calculating the actual risk compared to the potential loss in relation to what you already have now. And no one is telling you take everything and run from this market, because that's not the point. But I'm telling you, take a portion, eat just a little with a small spoon so you don't stumble along the way, but just gently satisfy your hunger and wait to see what happens next, because then you will be the winners. Regardless of whether the chart goes up or the chart goes down, because if it goes down, you can say, but I took some profits, I already earned something from this bull market, and that's that. If it goes up, you'll say, great. It's good that I didn't sell everything, because now I can sell another batch, 20 or 30%, and wait to see what happens next. So, getting back to the rules, because I'm starting to ramble a bit with you here. First and foremost, you only make a profit when you actually sell, not when you just look at the numbers on paper and see how much money is there, because that's not your money until you click Take Profit. And my dear friends, I know exactly what problem you have. The problem you have is that it's hard for you to part with a position that's constantly being pumped, that's going up, with your portfolio growing day by day. Every day when you look at it, you think just one more day and it's going to be huge. But it might turn out that just one more big day, just one more day, and it will be so huge because you've never eaten such garbage before since you can't afford anything else. Of course, I'm saying this sarcastically. And my dear friends, it's not like I just made this up. I've actually been in exactly the same place where most of you probably are now. I made exactly the same mistakes as you, and that's why I'm speaking now based on my own experience. I also lost a ton of money because of my own greed. Many times, I found myself in situations, especially during the bull run in 2021, which was incredible in terms of shitcoins, where all the safe moons, elongates, and basically all the save coins had their unbelievable pumps. And there were situations where I put in 4,000 and ended up with 180. Maybe I'll wait until it gets to 200 and then I'll cash out. And when it dropped to 140, I thought it'll bounce back. And when it dropped to 80, I told myself, now it doesn't make sense to sell. For sure it'll come back, I just need to wait. And when it dropped to 10, I decided I didn't care anymore, and I only cashed out 200% instead of just look at how much money I could have had. Why? Because I was greedy and simply didn't approach the situation rationally. If there's a profit, you take it. If someone is mad at themselves for taking a profit, they should really think for a moment about what the hell they're even saying. You only make money once you close the position, period. Taking a screenshot, making a little badge showing the level of your position, and seeing that it's not the filled price, but the current price. Bragging to your friends, your mom, your mother-in-law, your mistress, or the taxi driver won't change the fact that you only make money once you close the position. It's just like showing everyone around you, look at this Ferrari, look what I'm going to drive. All right, but let's take it for a spin. But I don't have it yet. Then why the hell are you talking about it? And I'm going to keep repeating this to you over and over and over again until you start telling me, Stasiak, shut up, I can't listen to you anymore. That's when I'll figure that maybe something has finally sunk in. You only make money once you close the position. That should be painted and hung on the wall. But listen, closing a position doesn't have to mean that it goes up 50%. You close it, and then you watch as it goes up another 50%. Just like you do DCA on the way down, that is, you average your entry position on spot, you should do DCA out in exactly the same way, meaning you gradually sell as the position goes up. Logically, if you average your purchase price, then why not average your sales as well? After all, it's the same thing. You close 20% on a bounce, then 30, then another 40, and at the end, you leave a bit for yourself, either to stroke your ego or in case the percentages keep increasing. You leave yourself a moonbag of 5, no more than 10% of your original position, which you don't really care about anymore, whether it drops to 0, since you've already taken your profits, or whether it does 1000x and you can brag about it to your mother-in-law. And that, my dear friends, is exactly how you should play every bull market, by planning your profits and planning your positions. If you don't want to end up with just a nice photo somewhere in your phone's gallery showing that you once had a position at the peak with a certain percentage gain, but ended up selling at a loss, or worse, got liquidated, which can be even more frustrating than simply selling, then you need to plan ahead. Remember, in life, you don't regret the things you did. You regret the things you didn't do because you don't know what the outcome would have been. So if you've made a profit and you're feeling an incredible rush, that should be a sign for you. If I look at my position and I'm super excited and I see that it's big, that there's serious money involved, it means that this is enough money for you to be happy and satisfied with that position. In short. So just either close it or close part of it. Now, even on CST Pro, I'm teaching everyone to take profits. Small partial ones. And suddenly it turns out that someone who always said, these small profits are crap, it doesn't make sense, I won't take them, I'll wait because I need to make real money. Suddenly it turns out that this person had been losing all the time, and now they've started making a few percent, even a dozen or so percent per month, which is an amazing result. And suddenly it turns out that it is possible to make money in this market. And why is that? Is it because technical analysis is difficult? It's not because there's some black magic or strange golden methods that will let you make money. It's simply about not being greedy and clicking that damn take profit button. So, my dear friends, that's how I make money in this market. That's how the whales on Coinbase make money. And that's how a trader at HSBC or any other investment bank makes money. Why? Because they collect profits. Don't look for perfect tops. Don't look for perfect bottoms. 99 times out of 100, you won't succeed at that, so take a piece of paper, map out what the probability really is, and start thinking like adults, not like kids who believe they can turn 6 zlotys into millions, because that's simply not going to happen. I can promise you that. Of course, listen, I don't mean to offend anyone here, but I'm also being a bit tongue-in-cheek to help you remember these things, and there's no way you should be upset with yourselves for taking profits. Sure, you could have made more money, but in the same way, there are plenty of other things you could have done in life that you didn't do. You should be happy with what you have here and now and strive to make these situations happen more often. Work towards creating situations where you have a choice. Should I take profit now or maybe go for a bigger one? Let these be the only problems you have in your life. Then everything will be fine. All right, but you might ask me, listen, what about the altcoins? Because while Bitcoin has reached a new all-time high, they're still stuck, or rather they're lying there, soiling themselves, already completely covered in crap. The question is, can they be cleaned up? So what about them? The situation is a bit more difficult because while at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, it was actually possible to sell them at very good prices, considering their performance, of course. Right now, my dear friends, things are not so rosy. And let me say this, contrary to what internet experts and the experts in the comments think, because obviously they are the best experts and know everything best. I don't think that altcoins still have the opportunity or time to achieve so-called parabolic growth. And of course, I would want that to happen because I'm a holder of many altcoins. My portfolio still contains those altcoins, some of which are in profit and, attention, some are at a loss. Yes, sometimes things are at a loss too, but I try to think rationally and not dream about parabolic growth because unfortunately, that doesn't work in trading. I look at my portfolio from a holistic perspective. So if a particular coin is deep in the red, it doesn't really matter. I look at the overall level of my entire portfolio. So at this moment, if we look at my altcoin portfolio, it's at around 140%. I think at least when I checked a few days ago, it was at 152, so I assume it's somewhere around that level right now. And what have I planned for myself? If Bitcoin breaks its all-time high and reaches certain levels I've set, and the money flow doesn't start moving into altcoins, meaning they don't start rising, then that's not a good sign. I simply sell everything and take the 150%. I'm satisfied. If I don't make it in time and my portfolio starts to drop and shrinks to 50% profit, I sell everything regardless. I take the 50% profit. Of course, along the way, I sold off some, which I also informed you about, but at this point, I still have some of those altcoins left. So listen, the plan for altcoins is very simple. You take what they give you, and I recommend the same to you. Remember that with Bitcoin, and sometimes even with Ethereum, although you know how I feel about it, you can make long-term profits on spot. It's just simpler. Making 100, 200, or 300% is doable, but altcoins are a kind of special creation. If an altcoin gives you a profit, you collect it immediately. If an altcoin goes up by 100%, you take out what you put in, and the rest you have as free coins. If it drops later, you can put back in what you withdrew, let it grow again, withdraw your initial investment once more, and increase your free exposure to those coins. Later, as they go up by 100, 200, or 300%, just sell. Because with altcoins, the rule is, if you have profit, take it because it might be gone soon. It's that simple. Don't wait for 100 times return. Don't even wait for 20 times. Don't wait for that moment. In my opinion, not even for 5 times, because there's a huge chance it just won't work out. In the 2021 bull market, there were around 12 to 14,000 projects on the market. Today we have ETFs which have taken a lot of money out of altcoins in order to buy ETFs and, well, to pump up Bitcoin, and we now have over 15 million altcoin projects. So even if all that money flow where the current market capitalization is over 3 trillion, meaning there is about $1.5 trillion more now than there was in the previous bull run, even if that money comes in, which is only 50% more money in the market than in the previous cycle, when that money hits the market with 50% more cash spread across many times more projects, it simply won't give you parabolic growth because mathematically, physically, and orthographically, it's impossible. So just come back down to earth, and when profits appear, I'm not saying you have to take everything, but take that 20 or 30% and watch what happens next. Of course, I don't know this and nobody knows. There might turn out to be some incredible situation where some altcoins do 20 or 30 times because there will probably be some small market caps like that. So later on, don't say, Stasiak, you said this, but it's actually that. And I say, well, fine, so just make the decision yourselves. This is my subjective perspective, but in this episode, I want to warn you against greed. Simple as that. Altcoins in this cycle are really performing terribly, except for a few exceptions that have actually delivered astronomical returns, so unfortunately, I can't think of anything that could realistically change the situation and suddenly make 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗦 and do 50 times gains. ETFs have caused the interest and money from the general public to simply flow into BTC, and no whale is going to buy an altcoin that's on the floor just because retail wants to make money. Obviously, when you look, and this is what you should be looking at the charts of a coin against BTC, for example, Sonic to BTC, Algo to BTC, or Ondo to BTC, you'll see that everything is just lying flat on the ground. If the money flow started to shift and those charts began to rise, that's a good sign. Those altcoins could actually start to grow a bit. So pay attention to that and just collect your profits. And in my opinion, don't look. If Bitcoin is at its all-time high, don't look at coins against USDT because that won't tell you anything. Look at coins against BTC because that will show you the actual money flow and whether the money is really moving into altcoins. And also, my dear friends, of course, you can laugh at me as much as you want. That's no problem. You can say that altcoins are going to the moon or that Ether will hit 10,000 by the end of the year. However, I'm not a dreamer. I keep my feet firmly on the ground and I say things as they are. Today, I prefer to have a certain amount of money rather than dreams or the chance to have 3 or 4 times more, because there are other ways to multiply that money. You can multiply it in the long term, differently in the next bull market, in the next bear market, rather than just losing 2 or 3 years of investing right now. And I think that if I were a dreamer, not the kind of dreamer who slowly works toward their goals, taking small steps, but the kind who just hopes for a lucky break, then I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. If I relied solely on luck, I probably wouldn't be speaking to you now. I'd just be talking to my mother-in-law, and I doubt she'd be interested in listening. And honestly, believe me, I wish I were wrong. I would like to be wrong about this. I hope I'm not. I'd love for my viewers and the people in the group to make 50 or 100 times their investment, because I genuinely want all of you to make money. I don't benefit from any of you losing. I do get something out of it when one of you makes money, because I feel incredible satisfaction knowing I helped someone grow their portfolio. And that's just how it works. Believe me, it's easier to sit down and actually learn trading than to count on some coin going to the moon and turning $1,000 into millions, changing your life overnight. That probably isn't going to happen. All right, but listen, what if, because the market is over-leveraged right now, we get a flash crash? And as you know, in crypto, anything is possible. Bitcoin could be at 200,000 tomorrow, or it could drop to 20,000. So should we be buying alts and Bitcoin, or maybe not? Because it might turn out that it's not a flash crash, but actually the start of a deep bear market. Well, there's no clear answer to that question, because we don't really know when we'll actually enter that bear market. Of course, there are certain levels which I'll show you in a moment, but no one really knows for sure. Personally, I have specific levels on Bitcoin, and if those are broken, that will mean for me that we've entered a bear market. And here, my dear friends, one of those levels that I believe would mean we're simply entering a bear market is dropping below this green liquidity zone we have here, which means falling below 71,000. However, I think we could even see a strong liquidity grab here, which wouldn't necessarily mean we're entering a bear market. But once we drop below 72,000, around 68 or 67,000, we'll need to approach the situation very, very cautiously. We had very impulsive growth. Well, growth never lasts forever. Remember that. If we have a turbo-strong, intense increase, we will get a correction, whether you want it or not. All right, but I showed you what it looks like on Bitcoin. But you'll ask me, what about the altcoins? After all, some of them are at their all-time lows. How can we know whether they will enter a bear market or if they won't? And of course, there are two scenarios. You know, I always show you two scenarios, so you can choose the one you feel closer to, because that's how it works in trading or investing. What if it goes up? What if it goes down? What I'll simply do? What moves I'll make? There are two scenarios depending on whether you already own altcoins or you don't own them yet. If you do own them, the situation is very simple here. So if you have them, first of all, you're in profit, and that's one of the most important factors. DCA upwards, meaning DCA out, will be the best solution here, because by taking partial profits from altcoins, even if the chart decides to reverse at some point and, for some reason, you don't manage to sell at break-even, you'll still be able to sell in such a situation at a loss, because you've already taken some profits. So in a sense, you'll break even or come out at break even or even with a profit, depending on how much profit you've collected. So DCA out right now is basically an absolute must that you should be doing. The partial profits you take at this point could also save your life. If a really major flash crash were to happen, so don't be afraid to take them, because it's better to take some profit than to be mad at yourself later for being minus 80 or 90% on your altcoin portfolio. I myself have been taking small profits for quite a while now. Delicate, but they are collected. The second scenario, listen, is one where you don't have any altcoins at all. The train has left the station and you want to jump on it while it's going 250 kilometers per hour. And this scenario also splits into two sub-scenarios. I wanted to ask my mother-in-law which scenario it was because I forgot. Scenario 1.1 is the one where the market is pumping and you have nothing. You don't have the altcoin you want, and no one, not even the Pope himself, could possibly convince you to hold back and not buy under the influence of FOMO. Here you need to assess for yourselves whether you want to buy, but keep in mind that your investment in the event of a flash crash could be underwater for many years, literally for many years, or might never recover at all, and whether you can afford that because it was just some surplus you had lying around, so to speak, or whether you simply can't afford to freeze your capital for years. If you can freeze your capital and you don't care, then just go ahead and buy, see what happens, and you won't have anyone to blame. If the price drops, you can just buy again, average your cost, and that's it. Maybe it will bounce back, but that only works if you have funds that you can, in quotation marks, afford to lose. But when it comes to that first purchase, don't do something like this. Don't go and buy with everything you have and then end up with absolutely no cash left, because then you'll just be in trouble. So it's better to use DCA as well. Scenario 1.2 is one where you can afford to freeze your capital, but you're eager to make a purchase, and that's it. In this case, of course, you could go ahead and buy it, but you must set a stop loss on the spot market at, say, 10 or 20%, depending on your personal risk tolerance, downward, just in case the investment doesn't go as planned, we get a flash crash, and you want to avoid any problems afterward. Because if you lose that 10 or 20%, it shouldn't be a problem. And some altcoins are at such levels that even if they drop 10%, it's whatever, because they'll already be hitting a deep all-time low. Of course, there's also an alternative scenario where you don't have any alts, but I can reasonably tell you that buying them now on spot is a stupid idea, so you just decide to trust me. And of course, listen, there's yet another alternative scenario you could try, and you have to choose for yourselves which scenario you want and which one suits you best. That is, you could set up some extremely irrational buy orders on the altcoins you want to purchase, like, for example, drops from this level of, 50 or 60%, because I've caught such irrational dips myself, and that's why I have such good entry points. Of course, in that case, you also set stop losses, but you can do it at the level of 5 or 10%, because if the price starts dropping even lower, it will probably already be a bear market anyway, so that loss just won't hurt you as much. So my dear friends, first you buy during a correction, take your profit at the peak, and then wait again for the next correction. Never the other way around, that is, you don't sell at the bottom and you don't buy at the top. And my dear friends, this is the episode in which I wanted to share with you some of the most important things, how you should behave in this market right now, and that you should cool down your emotions a bit. I'm not saying you shouldn't wait for bigger profits, because of course that's possible, but overall, take your profits and never be angry at yourself for having taken them, because that's money you've earned. If you start to get offended at them, they will get offended at you and will simply stop appearing in your life. So just calmly, without getting overexcited, collect what you can and enjoy your gains. And of course, if you enjoyed the video and got something out of it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss future episodes. And we'll see each other again soon, so take care. I wish you a wonderful weekend. See you.